of introducing for this keynote 3 of the most consequential thinkers and actors currently shaping that conversation. I will invite them one by one and ask them to come to the stage for this. I'll start with Ndidi Okonkwo-Nweli, who is the CEO of One Campaign. She is a graduate of Wharton School of Business and Harvard University and is one of Africa's most influential voices on food systems, entrepreneurship, and sustainable development. She has founded and led initiatives that have transformed how impact-driven businesses operate across the continent, combining innovation, civic engagement, and inclusive economic development in ways that are measurable and replicable. Didi, you are very welcome to this keynote. Second on this panel is Lionel Zinsou, who has served as Prime Minister of Benin and is currently the President of Terra Nova. He brings together investment banking, political leadership, and an intellectual tradition that is rooted in both African and European intellectual cultures. He has spent decades asking what genuine partnership between Africa and the world could look like on terms other than dependence, which is part of what the previous panel spoke about. Lionel, welcome to the keynote. Last but definitely not least is Prof. Achille Mbembe, who is the Executive Director of the Innovation Foundation for Democracy. He is a professor at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. He is a recipient of the Ernst Bloch Prize, the Holberg Prize, and the Spinoza Lenz Prize, among the most significant honors in philosophy and the humanities globally. His books have been translated into 17 languages. He will now open the conversation with Ndidi and Lionel. Prof. Achille, you're welcome.
Bien, on va aller droit au but.
Now we're going to see with Lionel Zinsou. And we know who is Ndidi Okonkwo. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves so that they tell us what they have to share with us. During the day, we had the opportunity to share ideas, to share experiences. We wanted to organize this pavilion to remind the irreplaceable voice of the civil society in the ongoing debate on the future of the continent and the one about international solidarity. We also wanted to reaffirm, and we have to repeat it without any doubts, actually better than before, that there will be a war for social transformation without the civil society, without the community. It's not possible. We also want to demonstrate how the construction of this future has to happen in the lives in which ourselves we are involved. And so for the session that's starting now, we wish to go higher. Of course, we have been at this level from the beginning, but we wish now to, with Lionel and Didi, to help us maybe to step aside and to shake a bit what we have been taking from the morning. We turn it around and around so that we can see from convictions and facts that have already been established. We want them to make us think in a different way, so that we can engage in this collective intellectual exercise, without which the summit, like the one that's starting tomorrow, would not have legitimacy and impact. And hence, I will request Didi to start and to share with us for 15 minutes around, to tell us from her own reflection and from her own experiences what appears to her to be the main challenges that we are confronting, and also other than the challenges, the solutions which appears to be practical to her, to help us deal with the present and the future. So did you have 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, to make sure that we have equality? Lionel will also have exactly the same amount of time, 15 to 20 minutes. So you're going to listen to them, the two of them, and then we continue.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. First, I want to thank Professor Achille Mbembe and the organizers for bringing us here today. Some of you might not know, but Professor Mbembe was my professor at University of Pennsylvania 31 years ago. And he still looks the same, but I haven't seen him in 31 years. And he was very influential in my life in shaping the trajectory of what I've gone on to do. And I'm sure he's done that for millions of students around the world. So thank you for your life of service. Thank you for your impact. And thank you for keeping the fire going. Because it's easy to lose steam the older we get, but he's kept the fire going. I have a presentation, but I don't think they're able to show it. But I'm going to ask that you end with the video I have in the presentation. So if you get ready for that, that would be wonderful. So the theme we've been asked to cover in 10 minutes is bringing society back in. And so my first question was, what does it mean to bring society back in? What is society? What has been the issue with leaving them out? And what critical role do they have to play, and what needs to change? And quite a few of the panels have spoken tangentially to this, but I'll try to answer those questions by just thinking about it. I think, who is society? So I've said everyone who is not elite is society. Our youth, our elderly, our most vulnerable populations, right? And what does it mean to bring them back? Well, first we must define agency and what it means to have agency. To have voice, to have opinions that matter, to have votes that matter, right? Votes that matter. In some of our countries, we say, everyone come out to vote, but the votes are not counted. The votes are stolen. The votes are reconfigured. Who designs who's at the table? Who designs what the table is? And who designs who has a seat? What does leaving behind society mean when critical stakeholders are not involved, who have no political cover, because that's what society provides, who have no agency for interventions that we design. Our interventions are cut short, and change does not happen. Distrust grows, and we see the victim of being insider-outsider. Who is an insider? Who is an outsider? How long are you an insider? In one political administration, are you an insider and then you lose it when power shifts and power changes? So what do we need to do to change that? Who has to reset the table? Who has the power to do that? And so those are all the questions that are running through my mind. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I've been in the for-profit sector and private sector, in the non-profit sector, and now in civil society at the president and the CEO of the One campaign, which was started over 22 years ago by Bono, Bobby Shriver, Jamie Drummond. And we do have an office in Paris, and I've been to France many times in this role as the CEO of the One campaign, but we have offices across our G7 countries and 3 in Africa. And I want to zero in on an example, because at One, we fight for equity and justice, and we fight for Africa to have a seat at the table and to shape the agenda. And our vision is that Africa is an equal player. And as Professor Achille said, we're so far removed from that reality, even though we want it, and we've been talking about it for a very long time. So I want to zero in on one issue that we have been tackling at the One campaign for the last 3 years, and it's on debt distress. And how does it involve society, and why should it involve society? We often ask ourselves, what are the root causes of debt distress? And in Kenya, we saw some of the outcomes of the root causes of debt distress. When children and youth went to the streets to say enough is enough, government is not paying for education or giving us good health care, or all they're doing is sending our taxes abroad to pay back debt. Debt we did not agree to, debt we did not negotiate, debt nobody asked us whether we should take, and debt that was too expensive. What did their elites do? What did they see about debt distress? How does this translate into hardship for society? So at One, we delved into debt distress. And we realized debt is not a bad thing. Many countries take on debt. It doesn't cripple them. So what's happening on the continent? And we've seen that African countries borrow 5 times more than their counterparts all over the world. 5 times more. And that between 2020 and 2024, the One Data team just released data that showed that the cost of borrowing by African governments went up by 91%. At a time when we're trying to bring it down, it's gone up by 91%. From the World Bank, from China, from even institutions that are supposed to be helping us get better, those prices are going down. Up 91%, unacceptable. And so what did we do? We started off with talking to the elites, the intellectuals, right? The people you heard on the platform. And that's where we often get comfortable, because that's our comfort zone. Those are the people we talk to. We said, okay, can South Africa take this on at the G20? We partnered with SAIA, the South African think tank, on coming up with a blueprint for a coalition of the willing, thought leadership. We wrote articles. We got it into the public domain. But that didn't solve the problem, because we had left out society, right? So as you dig into the cost of debt, you realize that one of the reasons Africa pays so much more for debt is this cost, which we call negative narratives. It's called a risk premium associated with investing in Africa. This risk premium, everybody says, oh, Africa is too risky. It's a black hole. It gets too much money. The money is wasted. Corruption is too high. Have you heard that narrative? Nobody in the room has heard that narrative. It directly translates into higher cost of borrowing. The risk premium, our friends at Africa No Filter estimate that just from negative reporting about our continent is $4.5 billion, just the press of negative reporting. Something happens in Sudan and the credit ratings of South Africa go up, right? This narrative has led to the challenges we face. And so we believed we had to bring society in. And what did we do? The first thing we did was to say, okay, if they're negative narratives, then we can shape them. We can change the narratives. The first thing we have to do is to take the problem head on. So we started doing something on the misconceptions associated with Africa. What are misconceptions? One misconception is that Africa is a country. If we go to France and ask the average citizen in France, is Africa a country or a continent? What do you think they'll say? Country. I live in America. Most people think Africa is a country. They ask me, do you speak African? Now, have we taken on those misconceptions head on? Have we addressed them, right? Head on. Even within our own continent, there are misconceptions by our own people about our continent. And many times I see people we call leaders but from when I was young. After Achilles' class, I started calling them rulers, not leaders. Now, beyond that, we have to calculate the stakes for the average citizen. We understand the stakes. The stakes are that if governments are spending 70% of their tax revenue repaying debt that is too expensive, it means they're not investing in their countries. More money is leaving the continent that is coming in. ODA, which we celebrate, has been at a decline for the last 50 years. So it's not today that Donald Trump cut USAID spending. It has been on the decline. More money leaves our continent. So what are the stakes? We have to make it clean. What are the proof points? How does it affect the average citizen? And how do they tell us that it affects them, right? And how do we elevate their voices so they know that there's a root cause, but there's also a solution? And then what is the viable pathway forward? And we've done this over time, and we're starting to show results. The first feedback that we have shown people globally is that investing in Africa makes business sense. That in fact, IFC data for 3 decades showed that the return on investment for investing in Africa was 6x the S&P 500, 6 times. That knowledge is not widely spread. How many of you knew that Ghana Stock Exchange had the most profitable year and probably the most successful stock exchange in the whole world last year? How many of you knew that? That's not put in the press. Most people want to talk about disease and war associated with our continent, or that people are rioting. There's good news to share. There's realities on the ground, but there's good news to share. And as we change narratives, we have to talk about our booming creative industry. We have to talk about our young people who are generating impact. We have to talk about the innovation on our continent. We have to talk about the dividends that our continent is generating. We have to talk about the technology that we're introducing to the world. And oftentimes, as we bring society in, we are not the right people to be talking to society. Who are the right people? Oftentimes, the messengers are the faith leaders, and I loved when that was mentioned on the last panel. So we've created a global faith council. We've mapped all the senators in America and where their faith leaders are. We show them data to show the power of their voice. We bring them into the public square. Interestingly, when I told our French team that we need faith leaders from France, they said people in France are not moved by faith leaders. Is that true? Do faith leaders have a voice in France? Nobody's talking. They don't? You'll be amazed at who goes to faith leaders to pray for them when it's time for elections. Even a Buddhist monk has joined our Global Faith Council because I met him at the World Economic Forum. They bring faith leaders to the World Economic Forum because everybody needs to be reset, everybody needs support, and everybody needs spiritual guidance. We also need amplifiers to touch the society. And who are the amplifiers? We've created a Diaspora Creative Council. The artists, the sports stars, right? Sports has a voice. Artists have a voice. They trust them. Moms and pops have a voice in communities. So we need to get them. And through our Diaspora Creative Council, we're amplifying the voices of those who can reach those who are in society. Our poet talked about Viola Davis. She's an amplifier. She is an amplifier. But there are many African amplifiers, and we need them. And then we have youth activists, youth champions. The young people have a voice. And if we give them the data, the support, the messaging, and we include them in the design of the campaigns, their voices matter. We've proven that over and over again at the One campaign. I love this campaign I'm going to share with you now. I used to talk about it all the time. The shape and the size of Africa. And guess what? Africa No Filter took it on, African Union has adopted it, and we are partnering with them to change maps. Do you know why it matters to change maps? Because look at the size of Africa. Please put that slide up. I want you guys to see. The average person in France does not know the size of Africa. You can put in the continent of Africa, China, India, the United States, 7 European countries, and you still have space. Why do you think the maps that we have on our school walls were drawn the way they were? To show us as a small continent. Because it affects the mind of people. We become inconsequential when our size is minimized. So please join this campaign, that Africa No Filter. It says, let's change the maps. The size of Africa matters. Let's change the maps. And I'm so proud that the African Union has taken this on, and we are partnering. I believe that bringing society in means that we're creating new tables. We're bringing people who are most affected by the causes we work on to design. We're ensuring that their voices matter. We're holding governments accountable. We're bringing in faith activists. We're making sure that nonprofits are critical stakeholders. And the private sector is also a critical stakeholder. So this is not a moment to reflect. This is a moment to act together. I would just ask for 1 second that you think about one mindset you have to change yourself about this continent and about the change required. Think about it. What is one thing you'd like to change? And I'd like you to please put that slide up because I'm going to have everybody join me in talking about one thing we want to change. And we're going to say it out loud. Just imagine you're in a church. Okay, so we're going to, please, I want that slide because I want audience participation. So I'm going to say, I'm going to tell you what the old model is, and you're going to shout out the new model. So we're going to be shifting from aid-driven to what? We're going to shift from import dependence to, from external control to, from fragmented markets to, from expensive financing that is not fair to fair financing. From external donor funder-led to what? That's what I'm working on with Wealth for Impact. From external storytellers, and I'm sure the media is in here, to who? African storytelling. Africans must tell their own stories. We must tell our own stories, and we must amplify them. So see yourselves as co-shapers who are going to make us bring society in. New tables that you create, diverse stakeholders you influence, the rebalancing of power dynamics, new types of capital, new partnerships. And I'm going to end with 2 quotes that I love. One is by an African young person talking to an African president. And he said, I'm no longer asking God to grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I'm asking the Almighty to grant me wisdom and courage to change the things I cannot accept. I cannot accept that we pay 5 times more than other parts of the world for debt linked to a risk premium. I cannot accept that the narrative of our continent remains one of poverty and disease when we have so many amazing contributions we have made historically and we continue to make to the world. I cannot accept that we will continue to have these type of outcomes in our society. And so I call you to join with me to change those narratives. And we're going to end with this video, which we created as part of our changing narrative strategy, which we've shown around the world. And it's a Nigerian poet, similar to our sister here, who is changing narratives. So let's play the video. And it's just 1 minute. I need volume. I need volume. No? If we can't show it, then don't worry.
Stay with me. You mean Lagos, where fintech rises before the sun? Or Joburg, where Charles LeBron didn't walk? Or Dakar, where rhythm breaks the rules? Risk? No. This is return. Return on belief. On the girl in Enugu sketching dreams which are cool. On the boy in Soweto coding futures from a shared laptop. And a Nigerian musician making dreams from a stolen laptop. On the market woman in Kumasi who knows profit without spreadsheets. On justice. For once, we know how to build with bruises. Remix scarcity into rhythm. We stretch coins into companies, our sweat, blood, and bodies. We take what the world throws away and say, not so fast, Abiku. We reinvent. You still don't get it. This is not aid. This is alignment. You don't donate to us. You partner, or you get left behind. Because the continent moves quietly, powerfully, unapologetically. So your hesitation is your loss. Because what we call hustle, we call the innovation 20 years later. We are not waiting for green lights. We are building roads on red. We are not fragile. We are anti-fragile. Our wounds became weapons. Our delays became data. Our waiting made us wise. Africa doesn't need your charity. Africa is your clarity. On where the future breathes. On where the world resets. On where value multiplies like cassava after rain. So if you fear risk, come. But if you're looking for a return on imagination, on resilience, on tomorrow, welcome. Welcome to Africa.
So thank you. This is an example of how you use a campaign around cost of capital and bring society in. We're now starting new initiatives, and one we're launching this week on Africa Forward is on Health Bridge. Diaspora partnering with us to pay for health insurance for citizens of the continent so that they're not dependent on other world regions. We're launching this with the France-Senegal corridor. So if you're interested, please come and see me afterwards. It's an example of African agency, Africans filling the gaps that the cuts have created, but also showing that we can take care of our own people, not just our families, but communities, because we care. And athletes are so excited about this. We just need an enabling environment, remittance providers to remove the bottlenecks, and health insurance providers to get on board. So that's just an example. There are many innovations that we've co-designed with society that are proving to be impactful. So this is not a time to talk about potential. This is a time to act. This is a time to implement. And this is the time to show results. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Si vous m'entendez, je vais plutôt utiliser ce micro. Celui-ci est petit.
Greetings of the participants, to my numerous friends here, and thank you, Achille, thank you, the whole team, who has, the team, you have done excellent work to organize this event, and also for writing. I do not know whether we have the right to comment on the report, because I think it should be given to the heads of state after. Now that you've given it to us, I would like to appreciate it. And as it was said by several people, that you are bringing out so many things that should be much more important to the people in charge of governments. So you're actually changing the way we look at things. As you know, you have an important intellectual capacity, even if the economists, I was actually very happy to see my economist friends. They were very good a few minutes ago. I wanted to congratulate them, whether they are Togolese or French. I think you are moving into in terms of the importance that the 1998 Nobel Prize had given the definition of poverty and all the possible solutions by making them social and popular elements, so that we can see a better way of dealing with the economical issues. And with the colleagues, the Nobel Peace Prize from 2019 on the empirical results on what we can actually put in place so that we can have an efficient a reduction of costs, and empirically we have carried out some social investment that is very good for the people. So we are in an intellectual tradition that is important, just because you've been working not just on technical aspects of development or of economics and social policies but you went into sociology and you went even deeper in the tasks that politicians have. So you are a bridge between what can be seen as technical development work, but also with what we are being asked here is a question on the forms of democracy in Africa. So I want to start with this recognition, which is important. I would also like to say that I'm going to share with you something that I find paradoxical in the concerns of those people who govern us, including myself, because in some months I'm going to govern, because you are telling us to introduce ourselves. So I did some politics. I didn't do it very well, but it was within the Prime Minister's office in France, because I'm French. And I observed a Prime Minister who 30 years later, because I'm also from Benin, I became a Prime Minister in Benin with some training, because it's the same job.
Tôt dans l'enfance, notre chef de famille était président de la République du Dahomey, donc le nom antérieur du Bénin. Donc ça fait longtemps que j'observe des politiciens. Et même si vous voulez 10 mois de primature, c'est quand même très court. Mais grâce à la France, en fait, c'est pas ridicule parce que 9 mois, 10 mois, c'est quand même beaucoup plus que les 4 derniers premiers ministres français.
During, if you want, it is actually, it is really 9 months, 9 months, 9 months.
C'est assez pour observer, c'est malheureusement pas assez pour.
So, yeah, so it's I'm actually in a very difficult condition that I would not want to advise you. So in France, so when actually when actually you're having difficulties, it's very hard, to move on. But in Africa, in Africa, so that's the. So for a person who was a mixed race like me is. So I'm black in France and white in Benin. I think it's clear. So are we going really to vote for a white president? So the vote is collective. There's a photo of each person, and we must put a stamp. We must stamp it for the candidate that you are voting for. And because I had taken the enough sun, so there was no white as such, and because I had suffered a lot of heat during the campaigns, so it actually the reason why I'm not the president of Benin. So if you are a former in Benin. So they look at you as a person who is. So my look as say it's perhaps considered like a way to actually where to serve the cause, the cause in the society civil or civil society. So for a person who is not actually dedicated or committed to profit-making organizations, so really this is very important for me. So They gave me actually to head the board of the council of advisors, in terms of the development. Which we actually when we are actually to talk to about 14 50 African countries. We are thinking about social development and for the development along. Well, frankly, 20 years ago it wasn't a priority, so you can see it clearly in the report. So if you want to bring back the civil society in this and make it a priority, and the country make it a priority. For example, the biggest form of important, in terms of investments in the whole world. It's actually housing. It's housing, and it's really so it was useful for me, and useful for me, and in our continent. I think it's a key to consider our continent. So so when we created a foundation in Benin that is education of culture, and then also production of artistic production, and that can be spread to the country. When about 21 years, in fact, everyone say that everyone is blocked, but how and why? So would you take advantage of this culture, the artistic creation, and as a social agents, as a social agent? And we did that, telling ourselves that there's something that we are going to do and put the importance of history, the importance of traditions, the importance of values, indigenous values. These values, so the big majority, we're looking at it is really something that is not useful. It's a metaphor, towards the create of development and the people. It's something that is important, in a code, that it looks immaterial, the pride, the fear, and to find your roots, to find your history, your values. It's very important, and also and also the classifying or the classification of the environmental, the 80s, in the 80s. No one knows that, if you plot in Vanyof, so no one would have told you about the dangers, and this showed that something that is important even economically. In Benin we can see it, because today it has become a key element, and we can see the front as the participation with the workers, the cultures, which was in the collection of French that won the Benin. So that was because the first week, and the National Assembly, French Assembly, so they put, unanimously a law to allow other countries, because if not, you need to do a law. So we have a what called that brings together a one law that unifies all that. I was found to be faced commission before commission in the National Assembly, and the MPs on the extreme right, they said, so you are in the process of trying to empty the museums, French museums. So we are going to give you maybe 26 to return some of things about it. There are about thousands of objects that have been taken from Benin. So products will maybe 26 of them, and but maybe I said before I respond to your question, I thank you because the law, the French law of the institution of man was voted unanimously by the National Assembly, by the group. So and and that includes yourself. So you have must at the museum. So it's key, it's immaterial. So that understands, or you can be used as an economic model, and it can be seen that vertical development of accepting the foreign, tourism, for example. So we can see today that on received that the national and the nationality without many complex issues or complications. Of course, the trade, the abolition of the trade, the slave trade. So this actually is a bore. It's really a big success. It's a big success because there's this feeling that you need to come back to your values, your pride, and that is a beer, because that was commented before, because it is one of the strongest things. So that is what I wanted to tell you in the few minutes that are remaining. So this paradox. But the difference between what he said actually is that il faut accompagner so that Africa can change, so that Africa can have another look, to the rest of the world. So it is actually what do we have to do? Maybe some introspection, some introduction, because this continent, it's also moving, quickly in terms of development. So I believe that the fact that the social in the concern in terms of infrastructure, it's something that that is acceptable. And that the young generation doesn't accept, and it's for that reason that we have a lot of trouble in this field. So the second point that is equally important, we don't have natural resources. So you have the diamond, for example, because you've talked a lot about this. We don't have natural resources. That's not true. So to have natural resources, and that means that the solution. So it's actually the need. That is not enough. It's not enough to have maybe something that is under the ground, so the reserves, the heritage, the heritage. We need to have the work. We need to have knowledge to be able to implement all these issues. So we need what we have, the resources. So it's actually total. It is a heritage. It's something that today, because we don't have the capital, it's actually essentially the property for Chen. So in this the fact that very weak in participation and the creation of value and the peer. So Guinea is going to receive very soon is going to receive the iron. I think one of the biggest, but for many decades, I think the Guinea was a vast country for the bauxite since many decades, but hasn't developed. We can, but that has not developed the economy of Guinea. Guinea. Okay, when you look at the mining sector, of course, but you can see what is happening. Maybe even the agriculture in Guinea. So we can actually fork. So the contribution of our big neighbors, the first producer of the Angola and in Kabul of oil. So the contribution to is actually the contribution to the GDP is actually half of that. So why? Because one we have little capital to mobilize, to explore, to extract, and also to transform. Yeah. So in good that so the pathology to have raw materials is a factor. Raw materials is a factor is a weakness of a factor of weakness actually. So we are having so we can have this the reserves very many resources that are not active and when you talk the capital and putting in place the working for the skills to do this, we need the skills to do this, and it is at this moment that it's the transformation, value creation. For now they are just reserves which are essential, but we the comments that we can beast. So we don't believe so because we haven't invested. So it's not the same thing, in the park. It is the same shows when you look. It's the same thing that when you look, it's a thing. The person doesn't always see. It's that agriculture, for example, with the energy, with water management and infrastructure, roads, infrastructure. These are key for the capital development, the most, the highest, and that is what we need, and everyone needs. So all the speeches that we have, all the speeches, all the talks that we are going to look at all our youth to the agriculture. So they have lost the taste of agriculture. That is not true. So I think what will happen is that today in sub-Saharan Africa, agriculture is actually contribute to about 28 of the GDP. In Dompido, I think in 2050 it will be more. Maybe it's going to be more than that. So obviously, so we're talking about productivity. Of course, is not what it is today. What is not good. Maybe the people who are going to and evidence in Yuga, there will be a good the weight in the contribution of the GDP, of course, and it's good to imagine a big. Well, there is no hope to create employment, in the agricultural luckily, because there's still something. That the leaders need to think about maybe, and this is in fact. We have in terms of resource budgets, resource very, very inferior, very small today. So I think we are doing about 14%, which doesn't allow you to engage, sufficiently. And what you seek, maybe 2%, an increase of 2%, maybe that will be an equal flow. So that it means so the public development in the account maybe, but luckily what will happen is that industrial transformation more, which is going to be more, which is be accelerated, and so the agricultural products and then the minerals. Because these ones, for a very simple reason, if you take the case of my country, and but because I gave you. So let's take some images from Benin. Why? You see, when you have a ton of raw cotton, you put in a ship to go and getting transformed in China, for example, in China. So the same, it's $1,000 maybe, $1,000 and dollars maybe of revenue, or maybe agricultural revenue or something, transport or something like that. But if you do maybe something not very luxurious, maybe you are shill. Maybe now I'm wearing cotton, Benin cotton, cotton, if you want. If you do only the t-shirt, maybe, and maybe $6,000, and there's about $6,000 in revenue. So what you can see, what is happening actually is not to have a lot of things that are going, to be being exported abroad. So they want to, because we want to live in town. So it has no future. I think what the future is to create value, and the value that you create is without selling of these dollars. So it means you move it to 3,000, and that is the value creation that is important. So this Gloria, they must perhaps from the government, maybe they must really be concerned. How do we add value to this? Maybe the government, but because it asks, so it asks maybe a double investment of capital. So it means maybe to increase maybe a little bit more, but also have more capital maybe, and the capital maybe, and then and invest in transformation. But we don't have no problem with the conceptual, because we always have in our talks that is in the theme that we're talking, that remains there. Go to the village. There are people who are doing that every day. So the China has done that for the many people have lost their lives. What they were trying to look for this democracy, where it doesn't make sense at all. And this. It is not in the look of the other, looking at the other, or comparing with yourself with the other person. It's not because we believe it is actually looking at our own image. So we need, for now, we don't have the natural resources. So for now, we have understood, the importance of value creation, but we will have to do something more important if we want to develop, financial wealth. And this is what a colleague said before. We are in front before a new infrastructure, financial, and in fact, we are in front of something, and it's actually not the issue of something that is psychological. We have today a transformation of our ecosystem, financial ecosystem, which is not very fast, but it's committed. So the good surprise, like everyone, we are going to finance ourselves, our growth. And not by but not by external funds, because I'm sure that when you're looking at the control of the economy today, we are still in a situation where we are financing the exterior, and so net. So we are receiving less from the exterior, but we are exporting all the profit. We are exporting a lot to the exterior, and the net, all that exported, and this is what you can see what happening to, like most of the country that are emerging or developing. We have all this that is positive things. So needed to pay attention to that, because we really need to do something. So this is a posture that is not sustainable. That is not. We cannot continue to explain that we are under debt. We cannot continue to do that. So the Africa is about 55% of the public the debt of the GDP. Maybe we could look at. So we already have achieved this level, very inferior public debt. So we are not capable of repaying this debt. Because you are not at the same level with the advanced countries. So it's the same thing. Maybe 20% from this country or from with this and country, advanced. But that is not true, because what we are missing, and it is the reason why the countries have been forced, is to have internal credit. I remind you, all of you, that. So the credit, the private sector, so in European, it's actually 100% of GDP, and Sub-Saharan Africa is 40% of the GDP. So by 100, like for example, the Netherlands, for example, more than 2%. Or Japan, maybe in Japan, for example, it's 40%. So if you do a mass of this debt, public debt, for example, we have actually a huge advantage of crime. So this is a situation, if you want, that we cannot accept, and before. We are in inverse situation where we are in a permanent that declared as economies that depend on economies because of the debt. So these are below. These are numbers, because we have to own. They are because they are as they are. So we need to advance a bit quickly in the financial ecosystem to be able to finance the transformation, the energy, the climate change, the the production, so that or maybe to the modernization, of which you are very proud. There is a technology that is going to change the production of the productivity of on the condition that we finance that ourselves, and what we need to reform. I think we'll have to do it in a certain way. It is in the process of being produced. So we are going to leave it for agriculture. Maybe we are also going to do it for the SMEs, the startups, maybe that we're talking about. Maybe if you talk, so it is actually still very hard to finance that. So the industry, the finance industry is it's an industry like the others, and needs of innovators. It needs innovators. I can see the people in this room who have been housing finance, and they've made an impact in each economy in the West, for example, and obviously, and that is going to happen very quickly, maybe, and maybe in the mentally public. And I am conscious that you're going to give me a few minutes.
Que cet écosystème a commencé à bouger, que les banques centrales ont commencé à bouger, que la microfinance a été déterminante, notamment dans la période du Covid, et va être utile avec le choc lié à la guerre de l'Iran pour nos populations. Et donc, c'est voilà quelques commentaires, si tu veux, sur des clichés. Nous ne sommes pas surendettés, nous sommes sous-endettés. Nous n'avons pas de ressources naturelles. Tant qu'on n'aura pas de capital et de compétences, on appelle ça des patrimoines, des...
Capital resources, we can talk about this as idle assets. The shares, lazy, inactive shares. So if we don't use this, we'll find, thanks to you, and I want to congratulate you because what you talked about, the mother and the child, in our studies on extreme poverty, 5% of the population in most sub-Saharan African countries between 5 and 10 years old. So meaning even in the second, third generation will not come out of poverty. And there's always lack, this food insufficiency, so nutritional insufficiency. So if these big questions are accepted, you know, you put this very well in, you know, you highlight this. So this is my conclusion. This is my conclusive statement. I would just like to say that it does not change anything, you know, this observation, that there are several things to do. And I would like to encourage all the young people in front of me. You're all younger than I am. I am quite optimistic because there's a population that now, in the future, even politicians, now taking these policies to heart, and they are aware that these things are there, and this was not there 20 years ago. Our memory of underdevelopment is going to change. There's a phrase from Michelangelo, who was a good creator and businessman, who said that, you know, God gave us memories, but he gave a small sister of this who he called hope. So I'm hopeful. I know that most of what you describe as the work is something that goes back to 2025. Thank you very much. I've just come to the end of my presentation. As you've seen, it's very difficult. Once you give the floor to Lionel, you can see how it's difficult to stop him. Partly because, as you've observed, I've less hair than he has, even if he's older than I am. So it's very difficult to tell him, please stop talking. On the other hand, as we know, Ndidi and Lionel, we like listening to them. We can listen to them endlessly. Yesterday I was listening to Lionel over 2.5 hours, and I was still asking when he left to continue. So we would like to organize a follow-up in this manner. Two styles. Ndidi has talked about less than Lionel. But if she would like to, I would like to give her the opportunity to comment on what she heard. And we'd also like that in this, exercise of connective intelligence, that we try and talk about examination and projection of capacities, from what our presenters have given us that it feeds our comments. In the white paper that we'll present to the heads of government tomorrow, we are presenting an open book. It is open in the sense that we started, interrogating some milestones in what we'll have after the summit. The summit, therefore, is a step. What are we going to do in the post-Africa forward period, if you like me to bring out this paradox? So, Lionel, if you allow, I will give Didi the floor to give us one or two words on what has been shared so far.
Very difficult to come after my elders. And I'll just pick on two things, and I'll just illustrate with stories. Because the question of bringing society in continues to trouble me. And one of the things I'd like to put on the table is that with all the great minds in this room and the great work that you've done in the paper, that we actually start putting some matrix together on what we're going to track, right? And I'll put some examples. I've been reflecting on why I got so involved in this work. And I wrote a book on social innovation and scaling in Africa in 2014, 2015. And I start the book with a story of something called the Play Pump. I don't know how many of you ever heard about the Play Pump, but this organization got millions of dollars, it won awards, and it was basically to solve the water challenges on the continent. And each Play Pump cost $10,000. And the idea for the design was that you basically put in a merry-go-round in a village. Children play on the merry-go-round. Water is pumped up. The village has water. Women don't have to walk for miles. You know, the narrative that I was trying to change, right? They tried to scale it, and they found out that children have to play for 25 hours around the merry-go-round before they have enough water to fill up the tank. They found out that if the play pump breaks down, it costs so much money to fix. Meanwhile, a borehole costs $3,000. Why am I telling this story? Because when we look at the history of development projects that have been designed without the communities, we find that there's very little evidence that they ever succeeded. Not only do we need to track what we're innovating, who is designing it, but who is on the board of who's designing it, who is funding it. Our African philanthropists part of the funding story, and that's why I've created Wealth for Impact. And we need to look at matrices, because the boards I sit on, and even the development engagements, I'm saying to them, I want to see what percentage is going to the local community of the money. I want to see who is on the governing council. I want to see what percentage of the community is there. And I think that's my first message is let's follow the money. And One Campaign has a great data team. We're happy to partner with you to follow the money for everything. We've talked about critical minerals. We've talked about agriculture. We've talked about job creation. We've talked about, but for all of those things, we will continue to stay at the pilot level, interventions that are too expensive, that don't reach the masses, that don't change lives because we don't have that evidence. The second is the importance of global policy, and I know that Prof is very well connected, and I'm going to use a Benin example. So I sit on the board of the Rockefeller Foundation, and it's an amazing foundation, and I've enjoyed being on that board. And on that board, I hold them accountable for the engagement in development communities and local communities. 5 years earlier, before I joined this board, the World Food Program was doing we were doing a program in Benin. Benin had excess agriculture products, and my company, Sahel, was exporting products, gari, pineapple gari, coconut gari, palm oil to Nigeria because there was abundance. 5 years later, the World Food Program is in Benin Republic. A $150 million loan from the World Bank was being used for their school feeding program. I went to visit the warehouse because I'm very distrustful of programs unless I see where the food is coming from. And in the warehouse, I saw rice from India. I saw beans from Ukraine. I didn't see any food from Benin Republic, the same country that had excess food 5 years earlier. So by the time I went to the school to celebrate the school feeding program, I burst into tears because I've been working on changing the narrative. When I talked to the Minister of Finance in Benin, why did you take a loan for school feeding? Is that investment or is it consumption? they said to me, we don't want it to affect our credit ratings. We don't want it to affect. I was like, wow. So there's an issue with the mindset of our power. There's also an issue of us speaking with one voice about what we can accept in our continent and what we cannot. And the issue of double standard, which is why I focus on changing narratives. Beans from Ukraine can come into Benin Republic, but beans from Nigeria, where we have excess, is not accepted by the World Food Program into Benin Republic. Is there a problem? Absolutely. Do we take responsibility as Africans? Absolutely. Should we hold others accountable for the double standards? Absolutely. And so I think we should tell ourselves some honest truths about what it will take for society to really come in. The irony of it all is that Benin Republic had taken out agriculture from its curriculum. So here we are importing food, and we're not teaching our young people how to make it anymore. So I want to just underscore the message I want us to have today is that if we come back a year from now and we're not looking at where are the funding flows, who controls them, and where are decisions made, we will continue to be a continent that's dependent on other world regions. And the most amazing thing that I've learned in my job at the One Campaign is people have told me, Ndidi, the future you're designing for Africa, I don't see a place for me. And I keep on telling people we have to work ourselves out of our jobs. If we're still talking about these issues, 10 years from now, we have failed. So my commitment and the organization's commitment is that we will partner with you on data. We'll partner with you to follow the money. We will track it. But we also have to fight to speak with one voice, to hold our governments accountable, to also hold governments in other parts of the world accountable so we can deliver for our people. Because ultimately, bringing society in is rooted on trust. People have to trust their governments. They have to trust the development society, and they have to trust civil society. Thank you very much.
Alors, Lionel me dit de vous dire qu'il est parfaitement d'accord avec ce que vient de dire Ndidi, même si, effectivement, les deux procèdent de démarches apparemment opposées. Je suis sous la férule de Luciana. Je souhaiterais ne pas subir une fessée publique. Nous avons encore 2 minutes. Je crois que nous allons en profiter pour remercier sincèrement Lionel et Ndidi pour la qualité et la densité de cet échange qui était, comme vous l'avez vu, un peu trop bref et qu'il nous faudra sans doute réorganiser, mais à une autre occasion. Donc, si vous le voulez bien, un grand round d'applaudissements pour nos deux intervenants. Et je remets la parole à Luciana.
Thank you, Prof. Okay, Monsieur Kako, would you like to come here for a photo? If you could kindly just step forward for a photo before you leave the stage. Please join for the photo. Please.